We begin today the Gemara at the beginning of Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph, the first line. The Gemara here mentioned about the Sefer HaZechreinis of Achashverosh, that what happened was his servant Shamshi was erasing what it said there, that Mordechai is the one that saved Achashverosh's life. And Gabriel came and rewrote it. Every time he erased it, he rewrote it again. Ravasi said, Dorish Rab Shila ish kvar temarta. So about this he darshaned and said, Umak sav shalamata. If when you have a writing here below, Shalischus and Shal Yisrael, which was for the merit to be able to save Yidden, Eino Nimchak, it does not get erased. Even if you try to erase it, it's going to be rewritten. Ksav Shalamayla. How much more so when you have things that are written above, that's for the schus of Yidden. Lekol Shekei, most definitely, this is something that never gets erased. Continuing in the Megillah, it said, Loi nasi imoy davar. They asked Achashverosh, was Mordechai ever paid for what he did? So they answered, no, nothing was ever done for him. So Rav says, why did they say this? They didn't say this because they loved Mordechai so much and they wanted him to get paid. Because they hated Haman. So therefore, they knew that this is going to antagonize Haman, so they said, let's get Mordechai paid for what he did. Then it says, Haman came, and what was Haman doing? Heichin loy. He was preparing the tree for Mordechai to hang Mordechai on it. Right? That's what he was busy with that night. And he came to tell Achashverosh about it. So when Abraitzer explains, these words, Heichen loy in the pasuk means, Tana loy heichen. Really, he was preparing the tree for himself. And then when Achashverosh asks him about how he's going to pay this individual, and he tells him the whole story, and then eventually what does Achashverosh tell him? V'asei kein leMordechai. Everything you said, to take the Levush Malchus and so on, go and do all of this for Mordechai. So Haman couldn't believe his ears. So he says to Achashverosh, Amalei, Manu Mordechai. Which Mordechai do you mean? Amalei, what do you mean? Ha-Yehudi. Mordechai Ha-Yehudi. Mordechai the Jew. Amalei, so Haman says to Achashverosh, Tuva Mordechai Ike biyudai. There are many Yidden that have the name Mordechai. How do I know which Mordechai you mean? Amalei, so Achashverosh spells it out to him very clearly, Ha-Yeshiv B'Shar HaMelech. The Mordechai that sits here by the gate of the king. So Haman hears this, he says, Amalei, says to Achashverosh, I take back everything I said before. You don't have to give him all these things that I said. Sagile b'chad diskarta. It's enough, just give him one village that will be his. Let him take that village, collect taxes there and do whatever he wants. We don't have to give him all this honor. Inami, or Haman says, b'chad nara. Or give him one river that will be his. So he collect taxes for people that pass that river. So what does Achashverosh say to him? Amalei, hanami havle. Give him that as well. And that's what it means when it says in the Megillah, Al tapil dava mikol shadibarta. Do not let anything fall of what you just said. Not only the things that it said befedish in the Megillah, but even these ideas that Haman added afterwards. What happens? Vayikach Haman esalavush v'sasus. He takes the royal garments and he takes the royal horse and he goes to find Mordechai. Azal he went, Ashkeche, he found him, the Yosvi Rabbanan Kamei. The Rabbanan are sitting in front of him, and he's demonstrating to them the halachas of how you do the kmitze of a carbon mincha. So Rashi says, why carbon mincha? Because this was on the second day of Pesach, and on the second day of Pesach is when you bring the carbon oimer. That's the main chiddush of that day. And the carbon oimer, you have to do the kmitze. So he was demonstrating to them how it's done with the fingers, that you rub off from one side and from the other side. That's what he was teaching them. Even the Chazi Mordechai. So as soon as Mordechai sees Haman, the Apek lekevle, he's coming out towards him, V'susei meched biyode, and he's holding a horse in his hand. Mirsas, he got very afraid. Amalu Rabbanan, he said to the Rabbanan, Hi Rishia, this Rasha Haman, Lemiktal nafshi kasi, he's coming to kill me. Zilu mikamei, run away from me, D'leitachvu b'gachalasai, so you shouldn't be burnt by his call. So what happened? So Bahishaite at that moment, so as Haman is approaching him, so Nisativ Mordechai. Mordechai wrapped himself in his talis, V'kam le'litz loisa, he got up to daven, Asa Haman. So Haman came, V'yasav le'kamayu, and he sat waiting with respect in front of Mordechai, not to interrupt his davening, V'oirech, and he waited, Ad Salik Mordechai litz loisa, until Mordechai finishes davening. Omar Lahu, so Aman says to them, to the Rabbanon, B'mayas kisu, with what were you busy talking about over here? Amrulei, so they said to Haman, Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayam, when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, man de menadev mincha, someone that donates a carbon mincha from flour and an oil, maisi mole kumtze de sulta, so he takes off a kaimitz of that flour, and with that kaimitz of flour, he gets a kapare with this carbon mincha. So even though before we were talking about the carbon mincha that was not a nedava, carbon mincha which was the carbon omer that they bring, but here the Gemara says nedava. So the Mefarshim say they were trying to show Haman how every Yid can bring a nedava, even a poor person that can't bring a big carbon or not even birds as a carbon, even just a little carbon mincha. With a small carbon mincha, with a small kmitza, you could already have a kapara. Amalahu, so Haman responds to them and says, Asi melei kumtze kimche ditchu. Your carbon of this kaimitz of mincha came vidachi, and it pushed away asara alfi kikre kaspedidi, the 10,000 silver coins that I offered for Achashverosh to kill all the Yidden. Amalei, so Mordechai tells Haman, Rasha, evet shekana nechasim, a slave that gets any possessions or any money. So evet lemi unechasim lemi. Who does a slave belong to, and who does all the possessions he have belong to? So this goes back to what we learned in the previous daf, that really Haman was Mordechai's slave, because there was a time before that he had no bread, and he sold himself to Mordechai as a slave for bread. Amalei, so Haman tells Mordechai, Kum levush hani money. Come, get up, and get yourself dressed with these royal garments. V'rochav hai susya, and you'll ride on this horse, the bailachal malka, that the king wants for you to show your honor for everybody. Amalei, so Mordechai says to Haman, Lo yechilna, I can't get dressed with these clothing and so on. Ad ilna lebei bani, until I'll go into the bathhouse, or ve'ashkol lamazia, and also I will take a haircut. It's not customary to get dressed with such kind of royal garments. Hachi, in such a kind of condition that I'm in, he was fasting and he was not washed at all. So he says, I have to prepare myself. So what happened? Shadra Esther. So then Esther sent out Vasresinu lekulu beibani. She made sure that all of the bathhouses should be closed in the city. Lekulu umni, and all barbers were also out of work. They should all close their shops. So what happened? So now Haman was forced to take care of Mordechai all by himself. He has to make sure that Mordechai is going to get dressed with these garments. So Haman himself had to take Mordechai into the bathhouse and to make sure he gets washed. And and he went and he brought scissors from his house and he was cutting his hair. As he's cutting his hair, Inged, he fainted, and he groaned. Mordechai says to him, why are you groaning? So Haman says, a person that was more prominent by the king, more than all other ministers. Now he became a bathhouse attendant and a barber. So Mordechai tells him, Rasha, weren't you once the barber of this village Kfar Kartzim? So that's really your natural position. Tana, and it says Nabraisa, sorry, Haman Sapar Shakvar Kartzim Hoya Esrim Vishtayim Shana. This wasn't some temporary position he had. 22 years he was a barber in this village. So what happened? Basa the Shaklinu Lamazye, after he took her, he gave him a haircut. Lavshinu Lamane, so he dressed him the royal garments. Amalei, he said to Mordechai, Sak v'rechav, so get up and it's ride on the horse and I'll take you around. Amalei, so Mordechai is taking advantage of every single moment of whatever he can do. So Amalei, Mordechai tells Haman, Lo yachilna, I can't get up here. The krisha cheloi, my energy is very weak. Mimei tanisa, from the 3 days that I've been fasting here. So Gochin, Haman bent down, v'solik, and Mordechai gets up on his back. Kisalik, when he got up on his back to get up on the horse, but he kicked him. Amalei, Haman tells Mordechai, Leiksiv l'chud, does it not say in your Torah, bin foil oyev chal tismach, when your enemy falls, don't express joy for this? Amalei, so Mordechai says, Hani mili bi Yisrael, that's if it's your enemy that's a Yid. Avol biditchu, if it's amongst you, here, Haman, that comes from Amalek, you should step on their high places. So here I'm taking advantage to fulfill what this pasuk says, to step on you and to kick you. And then what happened? He took him around, and he announced in front of him, this is what's done for the man that the king wants his honor. So what happened? When he was going and taking him in the street where Haman himself lived, Chazite brate. So his daughter saw him. The kaima igra, she was on the rooftop. So Sabra, she thought to herself, "Hi, the Rachiv, the one that's riding Avua, that it's her father, and V'hai the Mazgi Kamei, and the one that's leading him in front, Mordechai. That's definitely Mordechai that's leading Haman." Shakla atzitze the beis akise. She took a bowl of dirty water from the bathroom, V'shadise areishe da Avua, and she threw it on the head, which was her father. Dali Eine, her father Haman picked up her eyes, and v'chazis davuhu, and then his daughter saw that this is her father. What happened? Nafla me'igra la'ara umeisa. She threw herself down from the roof because what she did to this, and she died. Hainu d'chsiv. This is what it means when the pasuk later says, "Vayashav Mordechai al Shara Melech." Mordechai returns to the gate of the king. Even after this, he did return to his sackcloth and to his fast. He continued fasting to save the Yidden. But then it says, Haman was pushed, he went back to his house. Ovel v'chafui roish. What does this expression of Ovel v'chafui roish mean? Ovel al bita. He was mourning because of the death of his daughter. V'chafui roish means al shiur alay, of what happened to him, that his daughter spilled this bucket of waste all over his head, so he was totally dirty. And then what happened? He said over to all of his friends the story that happened over here. So in the pasuk it calls them Oyavav, and then afterwards it says Vayomru lo chachamov, and it calls them the wise men. So what happened? First it calls them the Oyavav, and then it calls them Chachamov. Kariluhu Oyavav and Vekarilu Chachamov. They're his friends and they're the wise ones. Someone that says words of wisdom amongst the Goyim is called a Chacham. I'm not sure what the Chiddush of the Gemara here is with this. I think the Marsha says Dvar Chachma means even if someone that says the words of Torah. So even the Goyim respect the words of Torah, and you say words of Torah, they're called Chachamim. So I guess these were his friends that knew words of Torah, and they were called Chachamim for that reason. So the Gemara continues, what did they tell him? Yehudim Mordechai. That if it's from the Zera, from the descendants of Yehudim, which is Mordechai, you began to fall, nafil tipul, you're going to fall and you're not going to be able to get up again. So Na'amrulay, what his friends or his wise men that are repeating here words of Torah, what they said to him is as follows: Imishar shvatim kasi, if you come from other shvatim, then yechaltalei. Maybe you'll be able to overcome Mordechai. But v'yimishavit Yehuda u'Binyamin Ephraim u'Menashe. If you come from any of these four shvatim, lo yachlislei, you will not be able to overcome him. Why not? Yehuda, by Yehuda, what does it say? Yotcha ba'orev oivecha. Yehuda has the power that his hands will be on the neck of his enemy. So he'll be stronger than you. Enoch and the other three of the Shvatim, the Chsivbu, it says by them, Lefnei Ephraim, U'Binyamin, U'Menashe, Oireraz Gvurasecha. The Eibishter arouses his strength. So the strength of the Yidden by these three Shvatim is also very strong. They told him a double lashon, you'll fall twice, they said, in front of them. Why does it say twice this expression of falling? Because they said to Haman, this nation is compared to dust, and also it's also compared to stars. When they fall, they fall all the way down to the dust. But when they go up, they get elevated all the way to the stars. So as the Mefarshim say, what this means is they were telling Haman, not only are you going to fall, but the Yidden are going to get elevated so high that your fall is going to be like a double fall. And then the ministers or the servants of the king, Higiu, they arrived, Vayavhilu, and they were rushing Haman to come join the party of Esther. Lamed, this teaches me, Sheheviyuhu bebehola, that they brought him in a haste, and as Rashi says, he was forced to go before he was properly able to wash himself off from the shmutz that there was on him, and he had to go join the party. Then what happens at the second party here of Esther? She says to Achashverosh, Kinim karnu ani va'ami. Me and my nation are all being sold. What was she saying? She said to Achashverosh, this individual that's causing all this trouble, he does not care about, he has no concern for the damage that the king is going to have for what he wants to do. And he says as follows: he was jealous with Vashti, and he advised you to kill her. Now he's jealous with me, and he wants to kill me. Vayomer HaMelech Achashverosh, and it says, Achashverosh said, and it says again, Vayomer LeEsther HaMalka, and he said to Esther HaMalka. So Vayomer Lomali. Why does it say twice Vayomer? Amar Abavo B'tchila Al Yedei Turgeman. Until now, Achashverosh would only speak to Esther through a translator. He didn't speak to her directly because he didn't know who she was. He never knew her lineage. He didn't know that she was from such a prominent source. At this point, she revealed to him that she's a Yid, and she told him, that I'm a descendant from the house of Shaul HaMelech. So Miyad Vayemel Esther HaMalka. So the Achashverosh spoke directly to Esther HaMalka. So what did Esther say to Achashverosh? Vatoime Esther, Ish Tsar V'oyev Haman Hara. So she didn't just say Haman Hara, she gave all kinds of introductions of these different descriptions of Ish Tsar V'oyev. What happened here? Amar Rabbi Lazar Melamed, what this teaches me is Sheisamachve Klapi Achashverosh. When Esther was coming to say who's the one that wants to kill the Yidden, she really wanted to point to Achashverosh himself. As we learned before in the Gemara, Achashverosh was happy to kill the Yidden just as much as Haman himself. However, a Malach came, V'sata Yada Klapi Haman, and he pushed her hands towards Haman that she pointed at Haman. The king got up in his anger and he went out into the garden. And then it says, and he came back from the garden as well. Makish, we compare Shiva Lekima, his coming back from the garden, to the same attitude he had when he got up and went out. Just like when he got up to go out, he got up because he was so angry. Avshiva, so too when he came back, he was also very angry. What happened? The Azal, he went out, and he found there were malachim that came down, that appeared as people. And the bustani, and they were uprooting the trees from his garden. Achashverosh tells them, what is your job here? What are you doing? Why are you uprooting the trees there in the garden? So they responded to Achashverosh, the Paktin and Haman. Haman commanded us to uproot these trees in your garden. So he was angry about this, and he comes back into the house, and what does he discover? V'Haman neifil alamita, and Haman is falling on the bed where Esther is. So it says neifil, he was falling in the present tense. Nafal mi bayalei, it should have said that he did fall. He fell down to Esther's feet to ask mercy of her. So why does it say neifil in the present tense? Amar Rabbi Lazar, what this teaches me is Shabbat Malach v'hipilo yaleha. A Malach came, he didn't just fall down once, he wanted to get up again, and the Malach threw him onto Esther again and again. And that's what Achashverosh saw. So Achashverosh says to himself when he comes back in, Amar, vai mi beise, oiveit to me from what I see in my house, and vai mi bara, and oiveit to me what I see outside. Wherever I go, it's trouble. This Haman is making me trouble, inside, outside. And Vayomer HaMelech, and the king said, Hagam lichbashes hamalki imi babayis. You want to go conquer, and you're falling on the queen right over here with me in the house. And then what says Vayomer Charvaina, and Charvaina, he's the one that came and said about the tree that Haman built for Mordechai. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Av Charvaina Rasha. Charvaina was also a Rasha, and Ba'isa Eitzah, he was involved with the Eitzah, with the idea of Haman to kill the Yidden. Once he saw that things went sour for Haman and his idea is not going to be fulfilled, miyad barach. So he left Haman alone. And Adarabah, he went to tell Achashverosh about the tree that Haman built. And this is what it says: that they threw everything away from him. They had no rachmanas on him, and they ran away from him. So the same thing. So that his friends, Charvaina amongst Haman's friends, all left him. And then it says, after Haman was hung on the tree, v'chamas hamelech shechacha, and the anger of the king calmed down. So it doesn't say shach, it says shechacha. Shtei shchiches halalu lama. Why does it say twice that it calmed down? Achas shel malka shel olam. One is the king of the world, that the Eibishter's anger calmed down on the Yidden, and v'achas shel Achashverosh. And the other is the anger of the Eibishter, again, the anger of Achashverosh on Haman. Or maybe Achas Shamak Shalelim also refers to the anger of the Eibishter on Haman as well. Others say the pshat of here is Achas Shal Esther v'Achas Shal Vashti. Now Achashverosh was always angry about the fact that Haman told him to kill Vashti, so now he calmed down for both what was going to happen to Esther and what did happen to Vashti. The Gemara continues and brings another pasuk. It says in Chumash, when he get to Yosef and his brothers, and this is going to be connected to Mordechai. L'kulam nasan, so what happens over there? After Yosef tells them that he's Yosef, their brother, So to all of his brothers it says, Nasan le'ish chalifas smalis, he gave them all a change of clothing. Ulu Binyamin nasan chamesh chalifas. And for Binyamin he gave extra. He gave him 5 changes of clothing. So the question is, why did he make his brother Binyamin different than the rest? Afshir, is it possible? Dovash and it's tired by Yosef tzaddik. This thing that this tzaddik, it caused him so much pain. In other words, Yosef himself. Why did Yosef get sold down as a servant to Mitzrayim and so on? It's because his father treated him differently than all of his brothers. Yukashal boy, now Yosef himself should stumble with this, and he should treat his brother Binyamin different than the rest of the brothers. And the Gemara brings the source to this. Amar Rava bar Machasi, Amar Rav, Chama bar Guria, Amar Rav. Bishvil mishkal shnei slaim milas. It's because of this garment, which was a weight of 2 slaim of wool, Shahaisiv Yaakov leYosef, that Yaakov added and gave Yosef more mishar echav than the rest of the brothers. Nizgalgal adover. That's how it all developed, the hatred amongst Yosef and the brothers, and the Yardav Esenu leMitzrayim, and they all ended up coming down to Mitzrayim. So if that was the cause, why is Yosef doing a similar thing to give Binyamin more garments? Binyamin bar Yefes, so Binyamin bar Yefes says, no, the point, he was really just hinting him something spiritually. He wasn't trying to treat him differently, but Ramaz law, he was hinting him a hint, Sha'aset ben, Lotzeis mimeno, that he's going to have a descendant, a son that will come from him, Sheyetzem lifnei melech, and he's going to walk out in front of the king, B'chamisha levushe malchos, with 5 royal garments. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, U'mardachai yatza lifnei melech, B'levush malchos tcheles, and the pasuk there says it is tcheles, chor, aterezov, gdoila, tachres butz, argamon. So these are 5 royal garments that he wore, and that's what Yosef was hinting Binyamin when he gave him the 5 garments. Now the Gemara brings also the continuation of the story there that it said by Yosef and his brothers. Vayipol al tzavre Binyamin, and Yosef falls on the neck of his brother. So it uses Binyamin Achav, Binyamin his brother. So it uses a plural term, tzavre. So the Gemara says, Kama tzavaran havele. How many necks does his brother have that it uses a plural term? Amar Rabbi Lazar, so Rabbi Lazar says, what he was crying about was really Abachal Shnei Mikdoshim. He was crying about the 2 Batei Mikdosh, Asidim Liyes Bechalke Shel Binyamin, that are going to be built in the portion of Binyamin, Va'asidim Lecharev, and they are also going to be destroyed. That's what he cried about. Binyamin Bachal Tzavarav, and Binyamin is crying on the neck of Yosef. Bacha al Mishkan Shiloi, he was crying about Mishkan Shiloi, Sh'asad Liyes Bechalke Shel Yosef, that in the future is going to be in the portion of Yosef, Asad Lecharev, and is going to be destroyed. So there's a famous sikha from the Rebbe about this. Why is each one crying about the Beis HaMikdash and the other's portion? Because the Beis HaMikdash that's in your own portion, don't cry about that. You have to do tshuva, you have action, not cry. Mashenkim, regarding another Yid, when you see that you can't do something about it yourself, you can help him, but then more than that you can't do, so you cry for that, for the other Yid. That's why each one cried for the other. Then it says, V'hine enechem royes, your eyes see who I am. V'hine achi Binyamin, and Binyamin, my brother, sees who I am. So why did he spell out Binyamin separately? What he was saying to them is, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amalehem, Kishem she'ein belibi al Binyamin achi, just like I don't have anything in my heart against my brother Binyamin, he wasn't there when I was sold as the slave, Shleihaya b'mechirasi, kach ein belibi alechem. So too I have nothing in my heart against you either. And then he says to them, Kifi hamedaber alechem, the mouth of the one that's speaking to you. He meant to say, Kipi kain libi. What you hear in the words of my mouth, this is what's going on in my heart. I have full love to you. Then it says, he sent 10 donkeys carrying from the good things of Mitzrayim. My mituv Mitzrayim. What is the good things from Mitzrayim? Omer Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes, Omer Rabbi Lazar, Shalach loi yayin yashan. He sends him wine. Shedas keinim noichei menu. Because older people like good old wine. That's what he sent Yaakov Avinu. And his brothers came and they fell in front of him. So what does this mean? Why did they fall in front of him? Amar Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes says, the chiddush here is, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Hained Amri Inshi. This is what people say, Tala, a fax, Be'idne, in his time, when he's in time of greatness, even though he's not the king of the animals, but in his time of greatness, Sagidle, bow down to him. So therefore the brothers bow down to him. So the Gemara asks on this pshat, Tala, why is he considered to be a fax in relation to his brothers? My bitziruse me'achva. Why is he any less than any of the rest of his brothers? The fact that he's a king on them, why is he only called a fax? Maybe he should be called a lion. This is not, now he's a king on his brothers. Why a fax? Ella, so the Gemara says, this mashal of a fox in his time of greatness was said regarding something else. Ella I itmer, hachi itmer. This is said for something else. When it says, Vayishtachu Yisrael al reish hamita, that Yaakov Avinu bows down by the bed when Yosef comes to him, so this is a father bowing down to a son. So on this, Amar Rabbi Yama Bayefes, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Tala be'idne sagidle. That even though Yosef is his son, but nevertheless that was his time of greatness, so he's a fox, and Yaakov Avinu bows down to him. The Rebbe also spoke about this once by Riches, and the Rebbe explained that why is he called a fox in this case? Because Yaakov Avinu bowed down to him, because Yaakov Avinu wanted Yosef to promise that he's going to take him out of Mitzrayim to bury him in Eretz Yisrael. And a fox needs special chachma. He needed special chachma to be able to do this, to know how to overcome all the obstacles he's going to have with Paray and so on. That was the main reason why Yaakov bowed down to him. Then what happens later, after they come back to Mitzrayim, after they buried Yaakov, so the Shvatim were afraid of Yosef, that he's going to now take revenge of them. So v'yenachim moisam v'yedaber alibem, he consoles them and speaks to their heart. Amar Rabbi Yama Bayefes, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Melamed she'amar lahem dvarim shemiskablim al alev. He spoke to them words that would be accepted by their heart. And he said to them as follows, Uma asara neiris, la'yuchlo l'chabis neir echad. If 10 candles cannot extinguish one candle, neir echad ech yachal l'chabis asara neiris. How could one candle extinguish 10 candles? So don't be afraid of the fact that I'm going to try to take revenge of you. Going back to the Megillah, what does it say? La Yehudim. Haisa oira, v'simcha, v'sasim, v'ikar. So what does this pasuk mean? Amar Rav Yehuda, oira zu teira. Oira, this refers to the light of Teira. V'cheinawai mekinei mitzvah v'teira oir. Simcha ze Yom Tov. Simcha refers to the joy of Yom Tov. V'cheinawai me'v'samachta b'chagecha. And sasan zu mila, sasan refers to the bris mila. V'cheinawai me'sasan eicha limrasecha. This refers to the simcha, the sasan that there is in the bris mila. Right, this is the special sasan by a bris mila that Rashi here brings from what it says by David HaMelech, that he had simcha when he saw the bris that he had. So this is sasan. And Yikar Elu Tfilin, the glory of Yidden, this refers to the Tfilin, V'chinuayme, V'rao, Chalami Yaretz, Kishem Hashem Nikra Lecha. All the nations of the world see the aid that's called upon you, V'yaram Imek, and they'll be afraid of you. And V'tanya, Rabbi Lazar God Leime, Elu Tfilin Shebiraish. This refers to the Tfilin that you wear in the head. I never spoke about this Gemara, like Yehuda Ma'aseh, so many times, what the pshat of this Gemara is. The question is, why does the Gemara have to bring a drasha? Ayra, simcha, v'sasim, v'ikar has a simple pshat: light, joy, gladness, happiness, and glory. What's the drashas here in the Gemara? There's many sichos from the Rebbe about this. One time the Rebbe said that all these things, ayra, simcha, v'sasim, v'ikar, the things that the Gemara brings up here, you have similar to them by the Goyim. They also celebrate, they also have their chachma and so on. Even though you have them similar by the Goyim, yet the Yidden stand out even in those areas that they seem to be similar to the Goyim. The Maimarim, the Rebbe would always, the pshat that the Rebbe would usually say in the Maimarim regarding La Yehudim is that you have Eire Simcha V'Sasim V'Kar, but when you bring the La Yehudim, which is the Kayach HaMesiris Nefesh of a Yid, into each one of these levels, it elevates the Eira, it changes the Eira, the Simcha, the Sasim, the V'Kar. Right? So in other words, the Rebbe teaches that we're talking over here the Yidden Bisman HaGolos. Even after the Yidden were saved from Achashverosh, what did it say before in the Gemara? Akati Avdi Achashverosh Anan. They still remained in Golos, slaves of Achashverosh. How does a Yid experience Eira Simcha Sasim V'Kar in Golos, even while he's in Golos? So therefore the Gemara says we can't teach the pasuk Kipshutai that they had light and so on in Golos, because in Golos it's very hard. Elamai, Eira Zu Teira, and so on. Everything the Gemara says is to explain how Yidden through their Kayach HaMesiris Nefesh could bring that Mesiris Nefesh into the Teira, and then into the Sasin, into the Mila, and each these are different aspects of Mesiris Nefesh that give the Yidden the Kayach to survive in the time of Golos. Okay, it's explained with Piratius in the Maimarim. Let's continue. Vesparshan Dasa. So these are the 10 sons of Haman that were hung on the tree. Aseres b'nei Haman. So Amar Rav Ada d'min Yafoi. Aseres b'nei Haman. When you say the 10 names of Haman's children, and then Va'aseres, including the word Aseres as well, tzarech lemimrinu b'neshima achas. You should all say it in one breath. My time, Kulu b'hadi adadi nafke nishmesayu. They all died at the same with one, their souls left their body together at one moment. So therefore we say it in one breath to commemorate that miracle. This is the reason why each person says it alone, and you're not yotzer from the chazan, because shemeya ka'ina, you can be yotzer from the chazan, the words of the Megillah, but b'neshima achas, that's something you can't be yotzer. That's something you got to do yourself. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, vav de vaizasa, the vav of the name vaizasa, tzarech lemimsacha bezekifa. You have to make it long, like a long line. Kimurdia de lavrais, like this long stick or this long oar that was used in the river Lavrais that you put into the water to steer the boat away from any of the stones that are there. So too, this is a long letter. What's the reason why it's a long thing? So the Gemara says, "My time kolo b'chad zekifu is the kifu." They were all hung on this one long tree together. So therefore, that's the remez of this long vav here. Rab Chanina bar Papa, Dorish Rab Shila ish kfar Tamarta. Shila from the village Tamarta said, Kol Ashirais, all of the shiras that are written in Tanakh. So you have the shira, of course, in Parshas Beshalach, and the others, the shira of Miriam, and many other shiras that you have in Nach. Kula Nichtavais Ariach al Gabi Levena. They are all written with spaces in the lines. It's written like a half brick, and then below it a full brick. Right, so there's two pshatim in this actually. And I think, well, let's just first read the words of the Gemara inside. Ariach al gabi levena. Ariach is a half brick on top of a full brick. Ulevena al gabi ariach, and then a full brick on top of a half brick. According to Rashi, ariach is a half brick where you have written in the space that's like a half brick. Below it, you have empty space, which is more empty space than what's written above it, like a full brick. That's according to Rashi. According to Taisvis, not over here, but in another place, Taisvis says that both the Ariach and the Levena refers to the words written, but they're not written all together. You have a half brick, and then space, and then another half brick, and space, and then below it you have a full brick, a full brick. They're staggered, but the point is that it's not written straight like the rest of the Torah, it's written with spaces between them. Besides, when it comes to this shira of, here we're thanking the Eibishter for killing all these 10 sons of Haman, and similar, there's another shira, Malchei Canaan, where the pasuk enumerates all of the kings of Canaan that were killed, Sha'ariach al gabe Ariach, or Levena al gabe Levena. So you have the names of Mordechai, not again, the names of Haman's children that are on one side of the page and on the other side of the page, but in the middle it's totally empty. Why is it totally empty? This is a hint to this fact that when they fall, there should be no place where they can get up. When you have a half brick and a full brick that are leaning on one another, so you can climb through them, you can get up through them. But when you have that open space in the middle, they fall down and they can't get up again. So the king says to Esther HaMalkah, B'Shushan Abira Hargoa Yehudim, then Shushan Abira, the Yidden killed. So it's a Va'abet, so the continuation of the pasuk there, it says that they killed 500 people, and I said it's Bnei Haman. And then, what does it say in the continuation of the pasuk? So he asks Esther, Ma she'lasech v'yinasulach, what else do you want and I'll give you? So the Gemara explains, Omer Abavo, Melamed, this teaches us, Shabbat Malach v'satri al piv. A Malach came and hit Achashverosh on his mouth. And the reason he's saying this is because in the beginning it looks like Achashverosh is complaining. Look what the Yidden are doing. They're killing people in Shushan. It's crazy what's going on. It's chaos. A second later, Achashverosh is asking Esther, what else do you want? He changed his tone immediately because a Malach came and hit him on his mouth. And when they come in front of the king, Omar Ima Sefer, he says with the Sefer. So simply, this is speaking about Esther. She was saying you have to send out another Sefer, send out another scroll to say that the Yidden are allowed to fight back and so on. So the Gemara says, if this is Esther speaking, Omar, why does it say Omar? Omrami Boyalei. Should have been an Omra, Lashon Nekeva, because this is Esther speaking. Omra Yechanan, Omra Loi. She said to him, Yoimar bepeh mashakasav b'sefer. That what you should say by mouth, what's written here in this sefer. So really, this is Esther saying that when it comes every Purim, we should read in the sefer of the Megillah the story of Purim. And then it says towards the end of the Megillah, Divrei Shalom ve'emes. The words of the Megillah are called words of peace and truth. What do we learn from this? When you write the Megillah, you need to have the sirtut. That's the markings that you make in the lines. When you write the words, it has to have the markings kamita shel Torah. Just like in the Torah itself, Torah is emes, the truth of Torah. So just like in Torah, when you make those markings in the lines, same as with the Megillah. Then it says, and the words of Esther were fulfilled because of what Esther asked for. Therefore, the Yidden were saved. It's only what Esther asked for. That's why the Yidden were saved. But the fact that the Yidden fasted was not the cause for the Yidden to be saved. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it goes together. This pasuk of Divrei Hatzaimais is the pasuk right before Maimer Esther Kiyam, so you read it together. Divrei Hatzaimais, because the Yidden fasted, and also a Maimer Esther, and when Esther spoke to Achashverosh, Kiyam, Purim Eila, that's what brought about the miracle of Purim. And then it says in the Megillah, Ki Mordechai Yehudi Mishnah LaMelech Achashverosh. He was the second in command to Achashverosh, V'gadol HaYehudim, and he was the great one amongst the Yidden, V'ratzi l'roi v'echav, and he was accepted by most of his brothers. So Dr. Gemara, l'roi v'echav, for most of his brothers, but v'loi l'chol echav, but not for all of his brothers. Melamed, shepirshu mimenu miktzah Sanhedrin, some of the Sanhedrin separated from him. And from what do you see from here? Rav Yosef Gadol Talmud Torah. The greatness of learning Torah is so great. Yosef Matzalas Nefashis, even greater than putting aside your learning Torah for the reason because you have to save the lives of the Yidden. So over here, what happened to Mordechai? He put aside his Torah in order to save the Yidden, and he became a Mishnah Lamelech. Mordechai. So you look in the beginning when Mordechai was counted, Basa Dalet. He's counted after 4 people that were ahead of him. But later, once he became the Mishnah Lamelech, Basa Chamisha, he's counted after 5. He's demoted 1 level. Meikara, in the beginning, the pasuk says, Ashabam, Zerubbabel, when the Yidden return from Bas, so they come with Zerubbabel, so the pasuk there counts Yeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Re'amya, I skipped the line over here. Saraya, Re'alia, and then Mordechai Bilshan. So he's counted number 5. And then in the end, Ksiv, what does the pasuk say? So over here it's counted Haboim Zerubbabel. They came with Zerubbabel, so it's counted Yeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Re'amya, Nachmani or Nachmani, and then Mordechai Balshan. So he's counted number 6. So he went down a level. Okay, so the Rebbe spoke about this Gemara also many times. Here you see this whole discussion of Torah versus going and being a leader for Klal Yisrael. Each one has their Maila. And in the end of the day, the Maila of learning Torah, you see over here how powerful learning Torah is. And the question is, if you forget your Torah that you learn because of what you have to go and do for the Tzarchei Tzibur, so that takes away from your level of learning Torah. The Rebbe brought the famous story of the Rogatchover, when they asked the Rogatchover to join the big meetings that they were having then to save Yidden in Russia. So the Rogatchover said, but I'm going to forget my Torah. Right? And therefore he didn't want to join. So there's a version in the Bavli that your Torah gets saved or the Torah gets remembered and so on, Mishtameres or Mizbareches, that it actually even... Okay, Al-Kapanim, so over here you see that there was a Yerida by Mordechai because he went to save the Yidden. So the Gemara concludes with this. Learning Torah is greater than building the Beis HaMikdash. As long as the Navi, Baruch ben Neriah, was still alive in Bavel, Ezra would not leave him and go back to Eretz Yisrael. Only after his teacher, that he was learning Torah from him, passed away, then Ezra left Bavel to return the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael.